Hi, I'm Peggy Farren, and we are live with the Understand Photography Show, where we talk about travel, nature, and fine art photography. Welcome to episode 76. Hey, are you thinking about going on a photography workshop? Well, today, Joe Fitzpatrick and I are going to talk about how to choose the best workshop for you. Okay, so stay tuned. First, a couple of quick commercials. If you're here in Southwest Florida, we're doing a couple of day trips here from Naples, Florida to photograph the burrowing owls. These are workshops and day trips. We have the little Understand Photography van that will take you up and find the best spots for the burrowing owls. One is March 20th and the other one is May 23rd. So if you're a snowbird and you're still here in May, or you live here year-round, or even if you want to come down, both of those are going to be awesome, but in May we're probably going to see the chicks, so those are kind of cool. You can sign up for the waiting list for our Apalachicola trip, but it is sold out. That's April 16th through the 20th. Our ladies photo retreat in Naples, Florida, May 4th through the 6th. We have one opening left. That's here in Naples. I lead that. It's a weekend full of fun photography, so one opening there. And then, of course, the 4 weeks to proficiency in photography is our interactive online class. You want to check that out on our website if you'd like to really get a good solid foundation in photography, and you do, right? Anyway, please, thank you for watching, and please comment, rate, review, and subscribe. We have a YouTube channel, The Understand Photography Show, and an iTunes channel. So if you subscribe to us, we really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. My guest today is photographer and Understand Photography's own technical specialist, Joe Fitzpatrick. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you, Peggy.
Nice to see you in front of the camera rather than behind.
Heather's doing a great job back there today, though. You know?
Heather rocks.
Absolutely. I'm just saying that so I get more FaceTime on the cameras. You do hear me, right, Heather?
Okay, so today we're going to talk about choosing the right photography workshop and getting the most out of it. So first of all, how do you define a photography workshop, Joe?
Okay, well, there's no official definition, as you know. I define it as a group educational experience that's designed to improve your photography skills.
A group educational experience that's designed
to improve your photography skills.
Okay. What's the difference? Okay, you know how you wrote up all these questions I'm supposed to ask you? I'm immediately not going to pay attention.
Well, I know that. Yeah.
What's the difference between a photography workshop and a photography tour?
Okay, well, they both have similarities. They'd both be in the field, obviously. You know, the tours are taking you someplace. To me, the difference is the workshop is primarily a smaller group where you're getting a lot of personal attention from the instructor, the leader. Where a tour is more of, we're going to take you to a place where you can get a really cool photograph and put you in front of it, and then you are on your own.
Okay.
That's kind of my interpretation of it. In either case, you're still hands-on. You know, with any kind of workshop or photography tour, you're hands-on, whether it's hands-on in the field or maybe hands-on in a classroom. If you're in a classroom, you probably have your camera there, or you have your laptop there if it's something on software or something like that. But in any case, it's different than a lecture. It's not just you looking and maybe taking notes, but you're actually following along, actually doing something.
All right, so let's get right into it. How do I choose the best workshop for me?
Well, you have to decide your goals. You have to decide what you want to do. What's the purpose? What do you want to do? Do you want to improve your photography skills? Obviously, you probably do, or you wouldn't be considering it. But specifically, what skills do you want to improve? Do you want to improve your Photoshop skills? Then you would take a certain kind of workshop. Do you want to improve your skills in capturing birds in flight? You would take a different kind of workshop. You want to improve your landscapes? Again, it would be a different kind of workshop.
So are you talking about classes or trips?
I'm talking about trips.
Okay, because you're making it sound like classes to me.
Well, okay, but you're getting the instruction.
See how mean I am to you? I'm so nice to all the other guests.
I get abused all the time. Now you're learning, but you're learning in a field environment where you're doing the thing, and then the instructor is coaching you on how to do it.
So this is a trip.
It's a trip
and a workshop.
And a workshop.
Is what that's what the theme of our show is.
Yeah.
Okay.
The workshops we're talking about, we're not really going to be talking about classroom-based workshops where you'll be learning typically the software. you know.
So don't you think that most people make the decision based on where the trip is going?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're saying, okay, that's your first decision, but your second decision is, now what do I want to learn?
Exactly. First, you're going to pick a workshop that's going to some place that's going to interest you, that you're going to want to take photographs when you get there.
Like Naples, Florida, Ladies Weekend, May 4th through the 6th. One opening left.
There we go. So you make a decision on where you want to go to have this experience, and what you want to learn and then what do you want to learn while you're there. Because you could be, a workshop could go to the same place and be teaching something entirely different. One may be focusing on landscape skills at a place, like the Everglades, when we go to the Everglades, or St. Augustine. We could be working on landscape or cityscape skills, or we could be working on bird photography, wildlife photography skills, or some combination of both. So you want to choose a workshop, you want to research the workshop and find out not just that it's going a certain place, but what is the curriculum, what are you going to learn, what are you going to be taught when you get there.
Okay.
Okay, so that's your first thing, is you really want to find out where they're going, if it's going to interest you, and look at the photographs on the website for whatever the workshop is, because they'll give you an idea of the kind of pictures you can expect. But you got to watch that though.
Okay.
You got to make sure that the photos were taken in the same season that you're going in.
Ah.
Because the season can make a big difference, obviously. Even someplace, I was out, as you know, I was out in the Palouse on a workshop. I went on a workshop given by Jack Ween, fabulous guy, by the way.
What's his name?
Jack Ween.
W.
E-I or I-E-N.
Okay.
Okay. Not sure which is the spelling, but he's fantastic. He lives out there, gives a great workshop. But anyway, I'm out there, and I chose which time of year because he was offering one in the spring, one in midsummer, one in the fall. And because of the way they plant the crops, one you're going to have old yellows, the other you're going to have old browns, one you're going to have old greens. So it can change entirely depending on the season you're there. So you really need to know. You know, you got to find out. I mean, some things are just obvious. If you're photographing wolves in the snow, then you know it's January or February.
You better go when there's snow.
Yeah, you know, but something like that, a couple months can make a huge difference in the type of photographs you make and capture. So you have to decide what you want and make sure when you're looking at examples, they represent the time of year you want to go.
That is great
Okay, so
advice.
that's really important. You know, I went on a spring dogwood shoot in Yosemite, and I have fabulous pictures of Yosemite in the snow. So sometimes you go and the weather doesn't cooperate, you know.
But that's part of choosing a workshop, because you have to have somebody. I mean, that actually would be a good question. What's Plan B?
Well, that's exactly right. You know, when you have to look at the experience of the workshop leader. And some guys are a one-trick pony, as it were. They know one kind of photography and they know nothing else. And they've never really worked much as a professional photographer. As a pro, you know, you have to get the shot regardless. You have to have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D and whatever it takes. And some of these people, they're fine as long as there's no challenge, because they may not be familiar with the place, so they go out there on a certain time of year and they say, okay, we'll do this, 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 and this. But I had an experience in 2012, I think it was. We're in St. Augustine. We go up there every spring. Fabulous time to shoot the birds nesting and everything else up there. It's just fabulous up there. We got up there and it was pouring rain. They set a 3-day record for rainfall. The streets were flooded. It poured. It poured. Now, the hotel we stay in is where most of the workshops work out of. Mm-hmm. I'm familiar with St. Augustine, and I'm not a specialized photographer. I'm a general photographer. So I had a plan B that we could shoot. So we did a lot of photography, not birds, but we did a lot of photography during the time because I knew places.
You went into the museums.
We went into the museums, churches.
I forget. I've seen the pictures.
Well, we also. I knew the guy at the hotel. I was friends with him, and his hobby was these rare exotic frogs.
Oh, that's
so he brought us a couple
Did
exotic frogs in, and we made a little diorama, and we're there in the lobby of the hotel, and we're shooting the exotic frogs, things like this. Other workshops that were there, they sat around.
Well, you know what, I was
they
glad
just
that
sat
happened
around.
to you, because the next time I did my Mount Dora workshop, I brought a whole bunch of stuff
Yeah.
for the rainy day,
Yeah.
you know, just in case we were going to do some water drip photography
Yeah,
and that kind
yeah,
of stuff.
yeah,
I brought it all with me.
You have to be prepared, and a good leader has a plan B, and probably a plan C as well.
Yeah.
Because if you've been doing it for a while and you have the skills, then you're going to have other things to do. So that's part of the thing. You got to watch that. The most important thing to start with when you're choosing this, make sure it's appropriate for your skill level. Okay, you don't want to go on a thing that's a workshop that's very advanced and they're teaching some advanced things when you're still struggling to shoot on manual. So you want to find out if the workshop's appropriate for you. Now, most workshops, you can be at almost any skill level.
If the ratio.
We'll get into ratios.
Okay.
A big group. That's the first thing. You can have any skill level as long as the instructor to student ratio is low enough where you can get personal attention.
Right, because we limit ours to 5.
Exactly.
With 5 people,
yeah,
you can be at any skill level.
I found early on I can handle 5. Now, some people are more comfortable with 3. Some people say they can handle 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Personally, I find 5 is my sweet spot. At 5, I can give personal attention to everybody on the trip, regardless of their skill level. I can do that with 5. Now, if you remember early on, we tried doing 10 with 2 instructors. Didn't work out.
It didn't, but I wonder if it would work out if you had a more controlled way to keep them. The reason it didn't work out is because they were all wandering off.
Well, no, the other problem, the one I'm thinking of, is when you wind up with 1 or 2 people that are attention hogs, or prima donnas, or whatever you want to call them, the one instructor winds up 100% of the time with them, and the other 9 or 8 wind up with the other instructor.
Well, why wouldn't that happen with 5 then?
It's easier I find it easier to control with 5. When you got 10, it's more difficult. With 10 with 2 people, it's more difficult for one to get away from the single person.
Oh, because you have the second person.
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly. It's
So
a
you think
psychological
that,
thing. Yeah,
okay.
you can't say, "Hey, I got to give these other people attention," because the other people are getting attention,
Yeah.
just not as much as they should. But I mean, that's my personal take on it. And everybody can handle people differently.
Yeah.
So some people may be able to juggle, I don't know how many, but to me, when you get up into with one instructor, when you get up into the 10s and 15s, I don't care what it is, it's a tour.
It's a tour.
Because you're not going to get enough individualized attention in my mind.
Yeah, I was surprised. You know, my son and I took a road trip a couple of years ago, and we went to one of the places we went was White Sands Monument, which is sand dunes. And we saw, well, there are a lot of photographers out there, and so we're talking to someone. They're on a workshop with some famous guy that I never heard of. But anyway, I said, well, where is he? And they said, well, he just sent us out here. And I was like, well, did he tell you what to do? And not really. He just took them to White Sands. That was kind of it. But he was some famous guy, so they were all excited to be there. And I was so surprised by that, because that is probably the worst way to choose a photography workshop, just because somebody has name recognition.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they're good teachers.
No.
You can be a fabulous photographer and a terrible teacher.
Yeah.
Boy, have we learned that,
Yes,
right?
Yeah. You have to. The leader has to be an effective teacher. I mean, you know, he's got to have the skills to do it. So there's a couple ways you can determine that. One is almost everybody's got a YouTube presence these days. So listen to the guy on YouTube. If he's doing lectures on there, or maybe he's done a B&H podcast, or maybe he's been on our show here, and you've had an hour interview with the person. You can get a good feel for what kind of communicator he is and see if he's a good fit for you. Because he's got to be a good fit for you, too. You know, if the guy's an uptight guy, somebody might like that. If he's a more brash kind of individual, you might like that. But you got to decide if his teaching style and his personal style is
Yeah, because I've had a couple
right
of guests that were really technical, and maybe and I would keep asking questions to kind of dumb it down, because you know our motto is we simplify the technical. So I would keep asking questions until it was, in my mind, understandable to everyone.
Yeah.
But if you were a beginner and on a tour with that guy, you might not enjoy it at all. But if you're one of those techie people, you like Joe Fitzpatrick, you'd probably love it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
oh, let's talk technical all day long.
Yeah.
But you're good at
Well,
simplifying.
yeah, you have to,
But you understand all the super technical
yeah, but
stuff.
you don't load people up with that unless they want to be loaded up, And the answer to the question is, you don't give them a 5-minute, hour answer to a question that they really want a yes or no answer to,
Yeah.
When the guy asks you what the aperture is and you don't go and you tell him the definition of aperture and how many blades are in the lens, and he just wants to know f8,
Right, exactly.
So you got to watch that kind of thing. So he's got to be an effective communicator. He's got to be somebody who like his style. So listen to him on YouTube. There's all kinds of stuff he can do. Maybe he's got podcasts, like you say, been on our show. He probably has a website. Maybe he's got some stuff on there. Maybe he's doing a presentation at the local camera club or something like that. That's a good way to meet them.
Yeah,
okay?
that's good.
So you can find out from that. If it's not your first workshop, when you go on workshops, ask the leader of workshops who he thinks are good workshop leaders.
Wait, say that again?
If you're already going on workshops, when you go on a workshop, ask the leader of that workshop who else he considers to be a good workshop leader.
Oh, I see.
I mean, most of us will share, like I mentioned, Jack Wing, fabulous guy. If you're going to police, go with Jack. You get a good experience. I know personally you will. If you're going to some place like China, Rick Salmon is fantastic. There's all these guys out there who are really good, teach on a good level, and like you say, you got to watch some names. Some names are, now the two obviously I just mentioned, they're fabulous, okay? Now there's some people, you go on their workshop, and they sound like they're a good communicator. They got great looking pictures online. They're great when you listen to them on YouTube. And then you get on the workshop and you find out that the guy's main goal is to take pictures for his portfolio.
So he neglects his students, or whatever you call them, students,
he's shooting his photo first, and then maybe he'll show you how to get another photo. Some of these guys are notorious for it. They get out there and they just start shooting and shooting and shooting.
I was actually on a workshop like that. I couldn't believe it. It blew my mind because there were too many people there. There were like 12, 15 people. And I was actually supposedly assisting this woman. And so she gets out and she got a model on horseback in the water at sunset. And so she just was clicking, and all these beginner photographers are just standing on the beach. And I was standing on the beach because none of us knew what to do. And the sun's going down, and the sun's going down. And then she goes, okay, did everybody get that? And nobody even took a picture. Everybody was just standing there not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
And she was oblivious to that she had 12 people that she was supposed to be taking care of because she was just taking pictures.
I went on one out to Yosemite with a guy, and he had been, another photographer I knew had gone with him. He said how great the guy was, right? But I guess the problem was the guy had only been on one workshop, and he didn't know the difference between a good one or a bad one. Well, we get out to Yosemite. The guy's taking his own pictures. It's kind of, this is the stuff here, and he starts taking his own pictures. And then he'd wander off from the group. The group wouldn't wander off from him. He would wander off somewhere else to take more pictures while the group is standing there. I'm part of it, and and some of the people know me. I'm winding up teaching the group. And to make it worse, about halfway through, the guy says to me, Joe, he says, I want to make it. He knew I did videos too. He said, Joe, I want to make a little commercial video. Would you mind doing it? So now I'm photographing him. I'm taking a videotape of him selling his next workshop while his people were over there doing something else, and he still ignored them.
Wow.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. And in the evening, we would go back to the place we were staying, and he would go and set up his laptop and start processing his pictures.
Instead of helping the
and
people.
doing nothing. And I wound up, Lightroom was just new at the time, I wound up at the kitchen table with the group, the other 4 or 5 people that were on the trip, teaching them Lightroom.
So you should have been paid to be there. Instead
well,
you paid to be there.
That was when I started to do workshops.
Oh, okay.
Because I went and said, hey, this is,
Crazy. So how do you avoid something like that? Because you were referred to this guy.
Yeah, but I was only referred by one person. If I'd investigated a little
but,
deeper, I
mean,
would have heard it.
Everybody likes, but you know, what I see is most people like the photo workshop that they've been on.
Yeah.
Until they get a better one. So just asking people, maybe that's a little helpful, but there must be things you can ask, like you should interview the person doing the trip, I think.
Yeah, you can interview them, but also when
So
you're
what
asking people, basically, you know, don't just, hey, Peggy, you went out to wherever with this guy, how was he? And you say, oh, yeah, he was good. Ask him specific, hey, you went out there, did he pay a lot of personal attention? Was he taking pictures most of the time? And then they might say, oh, yeah, that's right, he was.
What else would you ask?
Well, I would ask those questions. I would ask, were you happy? Did you feel that when you went to a place you got the photos you wanted? Did he help you get what you wanted? You know, there again, there's photographers when they go to a place and they shoot before they move on, they ask everybody, has everybody gotten what they wanted here? And I'll do that when we go to a place and we'll shoot something. I'll say, has everybody got what we wanted here?
What if you have one straggler who keeps saying no?
Well,
see, I don't ask them that. I'm like, it's time to go.
Well, usually you have enough. Well, if you get that, you say no, and you say, okay, well, what do you want to get? And then you spend a couple minutes to let them get that picture they say they want, you know. But you don't spend another hour there, you know. They say, well, you know, I want to stay here tomorrow because I missed the sunset, and I want to get it again in 24 hours, you know. There's a thing, but you can certainly work to get the same thing.
All right, so we're going to ask them, this is when we're asking somebody else about a referral. So did you get a lot of attention? Or did you feel like they were going off taking their own pictures a lot?
Right.
Because I take my own pictures during the workshops. I don't take as many as they do, but I certainly am going to be there. I'm going to get some pictures.
We're all photographers.
Yeah.
We're doing this because we love taking pictures.
Right.
So to ask you not to take a picture is asking you not to breathe.
Because I know that you sometimes don't take pictures when you do.
Sometimes I don't, but it depends on where I'm going. How many times I've been
If it's somewhere new?
If it's somewhere new, of course I am.
Yeah.
But if it's some place that I've been to, and this is the third trip I've been to this month at a place, probably not. Okay, unless conditions are different.
Okay, so we're asking questions. We're asking them, did you feel like you got what you wanted, the pictures you wanted? Do you feel like did the instructor pay a lot of attention to everyone?
Right.
Or did they just pay attention to the high maintenance person? Because there's always one high maintenance person, isn't there? What else can you ask a referral? Were there any hidden fees? I see that you wrote that in my... Well,
yeah, I mean, this is another thing. You want to find out about the workshop, number one. I mean, is it a luxury thing where you're going to be in these cushy accommodations all the time, or you're going to be out in a tent that they pitched at the end of the Everglades and handed you a can of Deep Woods Off and say, good luck overnight, you know? So you want to find out just the accommodations and the general conditions you're going to have during the workshop. So you know if you're physically and mentally going to enjoy it. You know, because it could be a terrible experience for you if you didn't expect what you get, you know.
Well, as you know, Joe and I started doing trips to Cuba 2013, I think.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the hotels, even the fanciest hotels, you had to condition the customer before the trip to let them know.
Exactly.
That it's not going to be a 5-star. You might say it has 5 stars, but 5 stars in Cuba is about 3 stars in the United States, right?
You know. You get the clue when you see the stars aren't a shiny gold, but they're all tarnished copper and green, you know, and then you, okay.
But we made sure we were so clear because my dad, one thing my dad always said is the first rule of business is no surprises unless they're good ones. So you have to make sure that as a workshop leader, you have to make sure that you're communicating. And as a workshop participant, I guess you really should have a list of questions. So what else? So like, what kind of accommodations are we going to have? That's a great question.
Yeah.
How much physical activity?
Exactly. I mean, you could have one where you're going to be hiking up and down mountains. If it's something that's going, if you're doing something in the Smokies and you're going to go to a dozen waterfalls, every waterfall in the Smokies is uphill to get to it and uphill to get back from it, I find.
Up and up.
Up and up. I don't know how I haven't figured out how that works, but they're up both ways. So you have to be, you have to be ready for this. You know, are you going to shoot something beside the road, or are you going to go on a 5-mile hike to find it? So you got to know this, and if you're really going to do it, you got to make sure you're physically prepared. So one thing to do is make sure you do a lot of walking. You know.
You mean before you go?
Before you go, yeah. Get yourself into the. If you're a sedentary person, get out there and go for a walk every day, and
for
what
months,
have you. And for
at least a month.
Yeah, at
well,
least.
What I learned, I went to Italy this summer for the entire month of August, and I was not in good shape. And it took me, I thought I was going to die out walking up and down all those hills all the time. Of course, I carried 2 cameras with me because I had to have my infrared with me because we were during the day, and then I had to have a regular camera anyway. But by the end of the month, by the 3rd week, I was in shape, man. But I don't know how I would prepare for a trip like that living in Florida where it's so flat.
Yeah, we're flatlanders, so it's difficult for us to get into that.
Yeah,
because
that's what was killing me, the hills.
I guess if you had some kind of a stair stepper or find some steps to go up and down, you know, and whatever. But,
or choose a workshop that's not going to be too strenuous.
Yeah, but it's something you really need to consider, because if you're not in shape for it, you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah, oh no.
You know, you're not going to enjoy it yourself, and you're going to be getting bad vibes from all the other people in it that you're essentially holding back while they're always waiting for you, whatever, you know, so that's going to be a problem too. So you want to make sure you're physically shape. What else is included or not included? Meals included, meals not included, accommodations included, some, all, whatever, trips back and forth to the airport, tips for people at the various places you're staying, or porters in the field, or everything else. You want to find all this out, because you see the price for this workshop, and let's say it's $2,000. It's, oh man, that's great, I'll get it. And then you find out that this is this and this is that, and turns out the $5,000 workshop is actually cheaper because it has all this stuff in it.
Yeah.
So you have to find out what you're actually getting for the dollars you're spending.
Okay.
Okay, and that can be a big, you got to look at that, and you got to read the fine print. Okay, and we're talking workshops that are established and led by good professionals. There's also another group that are, the guy got himself a YouTube channel, not even a professional photographer, so now he's got a little following, so he decides to do workshops. So he goes someplace, doesn't have any insurance, doesn't have any permits for where he goes.
So that would be another question. Do you have insurance? Liability insurance is what you're talking about. Yeah. And then
permits for where you're going.
The permits.
If you're going to anything, if you're going to a national park, they all require permits to go into. A lot of state parks and even local parks require some kind of permit when you're taking a group into.
Yeah, because if you think you're going to go here and you get kicked out because he doesn't have the permit, that would be a bummer.
Sure. I mean, you know, the guy's going to take you to the Everglades for 3 days, and you get there and they ask him for his permit, you don't have one, and then they say you're out of here. So now what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, the guy probably don't have insurance either, so you're out of luck. You know, so you got to watch and make sure that they're established and are businesses. You know, where they know they have to.
How do you ask that question? Just ask them?
Yeah, you know, that's a problem, because if they're like that, they're liable to lie to you.
Yeah.
So I don't know really what the answer is there. I don't know whether the National Park Service used to have a list of people with permits, but it hasn't been updated in like 6 or 7 years, so you can't go by that.
Yeah.
They used to have one for the Everglades, but it hasn't been updated since we started going there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that went by the wayside. So I don't know whether you could call them and say, does such and such have a permit? Maybe you can, I don't know. I mean, it's public record, I guess you should be able to, but it's a hard question, but it's something you have to have a little bit of concern for.
I think most of us who do have the permits, we list it. We say we are authorized, or we have the permit, or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, last week we had on John Slonina on the show.
Yeah.
And behind the scenes, we had this long conversation about all the permitting and how much paperwork it is and how much money it is.
Exactly.
The permits are so expensive.
Yeah.
And so that's another red flag if something is too cheap.
Yeah, he's not.
If something's super cheap, you have to wonder why.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's where you have to worry. You know,
I mean, the weekend warriors, like those
Yeah.
kind of people, sometimes you're going to, they might take you someplace that's not safe. They might And then they have no liability insurance. You got nobody to sue.
Yeah. But it's you know, it's that finding that's a problem. But that's a problem even if you're trying to hire a wedding photographer or somebody else, that, you know, finding that out, are they really what they are? Because there aren't any organizations that certify things or something like that, you know. I guess if the guy's a member of some of the national groups, you know, PPA or NP,
The
Nature Photography
NANPA.
Professional, NAMPA.
National Association of Nature Photographers Association?
Yeah, something like, but if the guy's a member of that, or he's a member of the PPA or something like that, you figure he's a professional, you know.
Maybe. All you got to do is pay money to belong to them.
Yeah,
They don't check anything either.
But they probably wouldn't pay that money.
Yeah.
Is what I'm thinking. They wouldn't pay to.
I wonder how much does NANPA cost?
I think it's up there with PSA, $300 or something like that.
Okay.
You know, it's in that range. I'm a PPA member. I'm not a NAMPA member. I keep thinking I'll switch over, but I never get around to it. You know, one of those.
You
things.
should join NANPA since I belong to PPA.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we'll have
do that.
PPA, you have
Yeah,
NANPA.
yeah. I get my insurance through PPA though too.
Oh, you do?
I get my liability and everything through them.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's you can always get that though. But so the instructor, I mean, that's the key to the whole thing, having the right instructor here. Where you're going, a lot of people can take you to a place, because if you look, there's if it's a good photo spot, you can be sure there's dozens, literally dozens of workshops going to that place.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to look at what they're going to do when they get there. You want to look at how good the instructor is. You want to make sure he knows the area, or hires people that do know the area. I mean, some of these guys may only go in during their tour. They don't live there or anything, but they've established a rapport, and they have local people that do know the lay of the ground,
Yeah,
and they rely on
you
them.
help people with your Everglades
Exactly.
trips.
We've done that, and we've had people help us when we went to Cuba. I mean, you know, that could interpret for us, that knew things, and we communicated with them and things like that. So this is all important. And you're paying these people. So obviously when you're paying these people, the price of the workshop is not going to be bargain basement to get this kind of thing. So it's important.
Okay, what else?
So you decide on a workshop, you look at all these things, you listen to the people, and they talk to you, and you kind of say, okay, this is what I want to go. So the next thing to make the trip successful is some things you need to prepare for. Number one, we already talked about it. Get fit. Get fit enough that you're going to be able to enjoy this thing. Workshops are work. Okay? You're up early, typically dawn or before, and you're there till after sunset a lot of times. You may have a midday break, or during the midday break you may be doing photography review or anything else, but they're intensive. You have a morning session and an afternoon session and maybe something else. And there's a lot of walking around and this, that, and everything else, and you're in a strange place, so your food's different, you sleep different, and everything else. So it's hard on your body. It's hard on the instructors, too. And you've found that from talking to them here on the show. A lot of them talk about how, you know, and you're dragging all this camera equipment around, too, because typically if you're going on this, you're not going with one lens. If you're going with one lens, it's probably an 800 millimeter, because you're doing birds that are 2 miles away. Other than that, you're taking a wide angle lens, you're taking a mid-range lens, you're taking a short tele lens like a 70 to 200, and then you may be taking some specialty stuff. And so you're going to be carrying around a lot of stuff. And if they're not working right next to the bus or van all the time, it's going to weigh on you over time. So you got to be fit, or fit enough to do this.
Right.
You don't have to be, you know, as fit as I am. You got to be. So.
Okay, what else?
Okay, you should know the basics of exposure. Okay, if you're still at a point where you're trying to figure out how to turn your camera on and get the lens cap off, you should be taking a class somewhere.
What class should they be taking?
Your
The
4
weeks to proficiency in
photography.
photography.
But you should be taking something that you'll learn the basics, so you get familiar with your camera and how to shoot your camera. You're at the workshop to learn a little more extra stuff, but the very basics you should have before you go.
Well, let me just contradict you, as you know I love to do. Because there are beginning workshops that say, this is a beginning workshop.
Well, that would be something. Again, we talked originally. We said, does it meet your skill level?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be something. If it's a workshop for beginners, absolutely. Then that's what it's about. It's about
because my ladies' weekend, we start with a class on how to shoot a manual, and then basically we practice cool stuff all weekend.
Yeah.
You know, we do a lot of night photography, streaking lights, all kinds of stuff where they're just constantly having to change their settings so that by the end of the weekend they are really, you know, they've really kind of got it.
Yeah.
But we do so many cool things, it's still fun for people who are more experienced too. But it is a beginner. I mean, beginners are going to be fine in my work. Just the weekend one, though, you know, and the other longer ones, you're right. It'd be nice if they have a little background.
They should have a little background. I mean,
and unfortunately, what we see here, because here at Understand Photography, we do a lot of private lessons and classes here in our studio, and we get a lot of phone calls that say, I'm going to Africa next week. I just bought a camera. I've never picked up a camera in my life. Can you teach me photography in 2 days? Right. Or 2 hours. Yeah. Actually, they want to learn in 2 hours, don't they?
And that's something there. A good piece of advice is never ever take a camera you just bought on a workshop. You should be familiar with it first. So you should have had it long enough where you run a lot of pictures through it and you're a little familiar with it. You're familiar with where the stuff is. You don't want to go on a night photography workshop in the dark and be trying to figure out where the shutter release is.
Yeah, because it's too hard to see.
I mean, it's so you have to. You should have some basics, depending, unless it's a beginner one. Another beginner one, we do a class-based. As you know, we do a Lightroom workshop here. Okay, and that one starts with assuming you just loaded it on the computer, and we show you how to set up your preferences. So we start right from ground zero.
We like them when they don't know Lightroom.
It's a lot easier to teach them than unteach them.
Yeah.
But I mean, there again, you don't have to have anything, but that's specific for that. But typically you're going to have to, if you're going to Photoshop World or something, which isn't really workshops, so I'm just using an example, they might be teaching you how to do some special kind of selections. Well, you know, if you don't know what Photoshop is, it's not going to help you much.
Right.
So learn some basics, get familiar with your camera, take the camera manual with you.
Or download it to your phone.
Download it to your phone. I don't care whether you take it as paper or you download it to your phone or whatever, because there's a lot of cameras on the market, and each one has its, even in the same brand. I mean, this one might have things in a different spot than the other one, and they move things around. They change menus, they change this, they change that. A workshop instructor is not going to know every single camera and every little detail of it, okay? So it helps if you have the manual so he can look up what you need, because he knows what he needs to look for. He just has to know where the heck it is on your particular instrument. So if he's got the manual, he can look it up.
It's not always easy.
It's not always easy. I had Nikons really throw me for a loop back 5 or 6 years ago. They used to have the autofocus button on the back of the camera, and they have a little switch on the front side. Well, they moved it from the back of the camera to the middle of the little switch.
I know, I remember that, because neither one of us are Nikon shooters,
and
I
went nuts looking for this button because I didn't see the button. And of course, I'm looking at one on the front. It looks just like the switch used to, but they put a button in the middle of it, and I just went crazy about that.
I know,
you know?
I know. Nikons can drive me crazy because they switch things around.
I mean, there's always stuff like that. So if you have your manual with you, you have it on your phone, the instructor can help you find what it is.
Right,
and that's a big help there. You want to, if it's a good workshop, a good instructor, he's going to give you some kind of information in advance on what to take and things like that. What kind of gear you need, what kind of clothing you need. And if it isn't clear what he's asking, ask him questions. I'd rather be asked than find out you don't have something because you didn't know. Okay, so if I haven't covered it, and hopefully at this point I've covered it all, but maybe I haven't. Maybe it's something specific to you. So ask questions. Okay, I'll be asking you questions. Do you need any kind? Do you have any dietary problems? Do you have this? Do you have that? You know, things that you may need that people need. So I'm going to find out about you. You want to find out what is needed. What are the weather conditions going to be when we get there? You know, in some places it's could be anything this time of year kind of answer, you know, and you're going to have to prepare for that with the clothing you bring. Other ones, it might be, oh, that time of year it's always 90 and hot and humid and never rains. So you want to find out those things before you go. And you want to have the proper clothing with you so you're comfortable for whatever it is. Your gear, always have some kind of a backup. Never ever go in a workshop with one camera.
We have a friend, do you know who I'm talking about? She went to the Galapagos and she dropped her camera.
Yes, yeah.
And she was just lucky that other people had backup because they lent her stuff, because she didn't have anything backup with her. She would have, and she did that early, and it wasn't her fault. She didn't drop it. Her strap broke, right? So yeah, backup at least a point and shoot or something.
Something, you know, you don't just want to rely on your phone, but you want to have some, you know, you get all the way out there and you not have anything. I was out in Valley of Fire, and I'm shooting out there, and I climbed up through these rocks to shoot this painting on the rocks. Okay, and I got all the way up there, pressed the shutter button, and it went click, and the mirror never returned. It locked up.
Oh no.
So I had another camera. Of course, it was all the way down in the trunk of the car, so I climbed down and got it and went back up. That was the second day I was there of a week. If I hadn't had that backup,
you would have had the whole week?
Yeah, because I wouldn't have been able to get another camera. And the fastest I could have got a camera would maybe be 2 days or something, you know, maybe overnight. But, you know, I had it there, so I just went down, got the new one, got back up, wiped the sweat off my brow, and took the photo. When you're traveling on planes and stuff, there's a lot of vibration. Vibration unscrews screws.
Oh, is that what happened?
That's what happened. The screw inside had actually vibrated loose and dropped down and jammed in next to the mirror assembly and locked things up, and that's what had happened, you know. But, you know, it's Murphy's Law. You know, it's always going to happen at the worst possible time.
All right, so
have backup
what else?
body. You want to have chargers, cables, all this kind of stuff, a card reader, especially if you're using CF cards, because none of the computers will have a slot for a CF card anymore.
Oh, good point.
So you want to have the card reader, you want to have whatever cables you need, a charger, or maybe even 2 chargers in case one goes bad. But typically you can find another person on the trip that has your kind of camera, unless it's a really strange camera. Then they might want to have 2 chargers.
Okay.
But chargers don't go bad that much. If it's something that's going to include some instruction on software, on processing, you want to have your laptop you're taking, you want to make sure the software on it is up to date.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, you want to make sure it's up to date, that it's going to be the same version as or close to what's going to be taught. You want to make sure that it can read the raw file from your new camera you just bought that you shouldn't be taking on the trip, you know, and things like that. Of course, you want to get your passport, your visas. You want to find out what you need, what kind of passport you need, visas, all this kind of travel documents.
And by the way, for those of you who don't know, many countries have different rules for your passport. And so like Cuba, you have to have a passport that has 6 months left on it. So if your passport expires June 30th, you can't go to Cuba in April. They won't let you. It has to, you know, have 6 months. So that's something that I was so lucky, because one of the trips to Cuba, she called me and she said, hey, your passport's expiring. I'm like, it's not expiring until April or something. But that's when I learned that rule. I didn't know.
You have to watch that,
And then my son, that happened, he went on his honeymoon to Iceland, and they had a 3-month rule or something like that, and he had like he was like 2 days past their rule, but they let him in. That was his honeymoon. Can you imagine? He would have been in big trouble, man.
More and more places are like that. Your 10-year passport is actually 9.5, you know, or whatever, because of that. So you want to have all the right travel documents. If you need inoculations or this, that, or the other, you need.
Now the workshop leader should have all this.
Should have that information for you.
Yes. So
you should have all that information. But if he doesn't, ask.
Yeah.
You know, because maybe you're with one of these guys, unfortunately, that
That's not organized.
That's not
Or
organized.
professional, not very professional.
Exactly. So you want
Because it is true. I mean, one of the things that was so shocking to me because, and of course you know my story, but basically my friend said, you should start teaching. And I said, oh, I don't think I'd be a good teacher. You know, I've only have 12 years experience full time. So I started teaching, being pushed into it because I felt like I really, maybe I didn't know everything. I thought you had to know everything, you know.
Yeah.
And then within, like the beginners that were taking my class, 3 months later, they were all teaching.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness, how do they have the nerve to even think they know even, but they all start teaching early, we're learning.
It's scary.
And then of course, you know, we've even had people on the show that just said, no, they've never been a professional, but they just started taking people on tours.
Yeah.
So, not that you have to, you know, be some kind of working professional to take somebody on a tour, but you gotta have a lot of experience if you're going to help that many people.
You got to know the craft.
And I think, you know, for me, I mean, I had a lot of experience just as a working photographer before I started teaching. But one of the things, you know, we offer these online classes. I'm always so grateful that I do the hands-on workshops and classes too, because I know what people are, things that I would never dream they would ask.
Yeah.
You know, they ask. So the hands-on stuff is helpful too. All right, so what's the biggest mistake that people who go on workshops make, in your opinion?
The biggest mistake is wandering off.
I agree with that.
I see so many workshops, and when I first started doing workshops, every once in a while you get somebody and they just wander off from the group. And just they wandered off, and you say, geez, maybe I'm not teaching right or this or that. And after a while you learn there's these people, they just wander off on their own. You wonder, why are they paying all that money to be with me? Not just me, but every instructor I know has the same comment, that they just wander off and they're not getting what they're paying for. And that's a mistake that people make. You should be trying to stick like glue to the instructor and asking him questions, because that's what you're there for, and that's what he's there for. He wants you to come back with more knowledge and great photographs. Really do.
I believe
I
that.
mean,
I think
really want
most
you to.
teachers want the students to learn.
We
We're
want you to
excited about it.
succeed, and we're excited to see you do. And we hate somebody who wanders off because we know they're not getting it. We don't hate them. We're disappointed, and that's what they're doing. And the other thing is not asking questions. I'm not a mind reader, so I don't know if you have a question. I can teach so much and this and that, but I might be missing a cue that you're not.
Yeah, some people are good at pretending that they're doing something when they're not.
Exactly.
I mean, the one nice thing about that we have such a limit, only 5 photographers, you kind of can keep an eye and see how, if they're doing what you think they should be doing, but sometimes they act like they're doing it and they're not getting it at all.
So, you know, if you're on a workshop, ask questions. Don't just go along. You're there, you're the customer, and the leader is happy to answer your questions. So please ask the questions. We want you to get great photographs. We want you to learn whatever we're teaching. So ask. Okay, that's the big mistake people make, is not asking or wandering off. And I've seen that, and every instructor that I know has the same complaint, that you get people doing that. You should set goals for yourself. What do you want to learn on this trip? What do you want to come back with? You know, I want to come back with these kind of photographs. I want to try and increase my skills on this particular thing. So have some kind of goals that you can reach for, you know.
That's hard for people though, Joe. I mean, people don't know.
No.
They know they want good pictures, but they don't know what they need to learn to get to that, you know?
Well, maybe just knowing they need a certain kind of picture, and then they can ask the instructor, how can I do this?
Yeah,
and he can look and say,
advice.
okay, well, to do this, I'm going to show you this, and we're going to be teaching that, or whatever, so he can help them do that. So have some general idea of what you want to do there. You can research the location you're going to, too. You know, go on 500 pics and this, that, and the other, and look at photographs that have been taken there and get a general idea of what photo opportunities are going to be available for you when you go. So you can have a general idea like that.
Hold on, though.
Okay.
Now, this is going into my wedding photography world.
Okay.
Oh, because one of the things that brides do is they pin all these photos that they love.
Oh.
And then when they get disappointed because my photographer didn't get all this thousands of pictures. Well, it's the same thing with a workshop.
Good point.
This is something, if you do this, you need to talk to the workshop leader before you go so he can say, hey, we're not going there.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you want that picture, this isn't the right workshop for you.
Yeah. Oh, you should, but I'm saying look at the picture, you get a general idea.
No, I know what you meant. I just wanted to,
but there's a good
put my spin on it.
There's a good example of that when I went out to the Palouse. Well, there's this waterfall out there with this really cool horseshoe kind of thing and everything else, you know. And I get out there and I mentioned it to Jack. I said, we're going there. And he said, no. And I said, why not? He said, there's no water this time of year. You know, so, okay. That's why we're not going there. But, I mean, that wasn't a primary thing. It was something, oh, cool, we do it, but you don't get that time of year. But that's the kind of thing. Now, another mistake that photographers make when they go on these field workshops that involve a lot of working, a week before they go, they buy themselves a brand new pair of hiking boots.
Oh, yeah.
And then they are absolutely miserable the whole time because you got to break a pair of shoes or boots in. So you shouldn't be going out there in new boots.
I understand, though. I understand it all. I understand buying the camera last minute. I understand buying the clothes last minute because you're busy.
Well,
you're busy.
sure, but that's what happens. But you know,
but
shoes especially, because if your feet hurt, you're not having a good time. No. So that's one thing. Try and better the wrong shoes that are comfortable than the right shoes that aren't. You know, I mean, I look at it that way. So having comfortable shoes is really a big thing to me. I mean, that to me is got to be one of the biggest things.
All right, what else? Anything else?
Going back a little bit, avoid distractions when you're on the workshop.
Now, what does that mean?
I was out in the Tetons and Yellowstone with a group. One of the guys on the group had some stuff going on in a house that he had back here. He had an air conditioner that broke down on a rental property. So he spent the entire workshop on the phone every time he could get a cell phone. Anytime we got something high, he's got the cell phone out, going back and forth because he wanted to save an extra $100 on what the repair was going to cost. So he was going back and forth calling this guy and this and that. And he was distracted, so he wasn't getting the shots because half his mind was on this problem back at home and he wasn't focused on the photography. So he was missing a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an extreme
right, no, but
example.
People are so addicted to their cell phones.
But, you know,
if you're on a workshop, that was one of the nicest things about being in Cuba. No, you couldn't even, there was no cell signal. There were Wi-Fi. Well, I mean, it's much different now in 2018, but in 2013,
no, it was,
you couldn't even get Wi-Fi in the freaking hotel, and you paid for it. I paid extra for it, and I couldn't get it.
So you want to avoid distractions. You know, try and focus on what you're learning. That to me is an important thing.
Yeah.
You want to have fun while you're there. You want to we talked about backups. You want to have extra memory cards too. And when you're on the trip, have something to back up your images onto.
Okay, so do you have to bring your laptop? What if I don't want to drag my laptop along? They do have little devices. I know you can back them up, but I don't.
I had one of them years ago, and I thought it would be great for a while because I think it held 1 gigabyte of storage. You know, that's when we had cards that were 256K or something.
Yeah.
But you know, they have some devices like that, but you start pricing them and you could buy an old laptop for what they cost.
But then you got to carry the laptop.
But then you got to carry a laptop. But a lot of people carry it anyway because they want to look at their pictures at night and things like this.
Well, my advice on that though is to use more than one card.
Yeah.
I mean, like I went to Italy for a month. I didn't back anything up. Even though my laptop was there, I still didn't back up anything because I was exhausted by the
Right.
time I got home every night. But I had 32 gig cards, but I never used them up. I would
Okay.
do, if I wouldn't go more than 2 days on a card, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what, just because I knew if one of them got corrupted or I lost it or whatever, that it would be. But I didn't. I mean, it is better to back them up, but I didn't.
We want to back it up for a couple of reasons. You have 2 copies of it, and one copy is somewhere in a different suitcase or something than the first one.
Yeah.
Because in some parts of the world, there's a lot of theft.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's another reason to have the backup is, okay, so they grab your camera or they grab your suitcase that has a camera in it.
Yeah.
Okay, the other one has my backup, so I haven't lost all the photos I took, you know.
But you can't really put them in like Dropbox because they just wouldn't load, right? I mean, unless you're somewhere with super fast internet,
Yeah, I mean,
you can't really put them in the cloud anywhere.
No, cloud
So
isn't
you gotta-
practical, it's too slow.
Yeah.
You're not going to find much cloud
So
service.
maybe keep your cards in different places from your camera too.
Yeah, exactly. When you take them out of the camera, put them in a different
All right.
suitcase.
We got to wrap it up. What else? What else you think? What else to wrap it up? Let's see. I'm looking through my questions. I skipped a lot of your questions that you wrote in here. So what's the? Well, I know you're going to Apalachicola area,
Yeah.
which is in the Panhandle of Florida,
Right.
and it's like old Florida. So
Oh,
that's
it's-
in April.
That's a totally cool place.
And then next year you've got Everglades trip planned. I don't have them on the schedule yet, but we do have the dates. I just got to get them on the schedule. Everglades and St. Augustine, right?
St. Augustine.
So
We may go back to Apalachicola again. We'll see. But St. Augustine for sure next year, and that's a fabulous trip because that's a mixed trip. We shoot birds in the morning, and the time of year we go in the spring. Over 1,000 nesting pairs of a wide variety of birds. So we shoot that in the morning, and then in the afternoon and the evening we do Old St. Augustine. We do the doors and the cathedrals and all this kind of thing.
Cityscapes, and street photography,
and people and everything else. So it's a mixed trip, and it's a great variety. I
that's the
love
kind of
that
trip I like. I don't like to do one thing. I'm not that interested in one thing. I like variety.
And of course, our Everglades trip, I mean, we live here. We know the Everglades.
Yeah.
So we have an Everglades trip. And the Everglades changes every year. Last year was a good year for birds because it was very dry. So we had more birds than we wanted sometimes. You couldn't get a clean shot of a bird because there were 5
Too
there.
many.
You know? This year, we have the highest water levels in the Everglades that we've had in 50 years. This being 2018 right now. So the birds are scarce because they're spread out through the huge park. But it's fabulous for landscapes because we have all this water.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we have fabulous reflections. So it's been a great year for landscapes in the Everglades. So things change with the season.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
So I'm excited about both of those
What
trips
about
next
any
year.
personal trips? I know where you're going.
Oh, I'm going to Acadia.
Have you ever been there?
No, I have not.
Me neither.
It's one of the places that I wanted to go the last couple of years, and I'm
Acadia
fortunate.
National Park is in Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so good about that place?
It has a variety. You have seascapes. You have some
They've
old
got,
towns
that's
up
where
there.
they have like rocky
Yeah, they have the rocky
seascapes,
coast,
right?
and
They don't have the
everything.
sand, right?
No. This is all rocky,
And they got-
water dashing up onto the rocks kind of
cool,
thing.
yeah.
Lighthouses, the whole kind of thing there. So exactly the opposite of what we have here in Florida. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a wonderful trip. And of course, you're speaking at New England.
Camera Club Conference. Oh, I forgot to do my commercial. It's 5
Yeah.
o'clock, so I'm gonna cut you off. Joe Fitzpatrick, thank you
Okay,
for being
a
a
pleasure.
guest on the
Okay.
Understand Photography
Show.
Show. By the way, Joe Fitzpatrick is the president of the Florida Camera Club Council, which is the statewide, like the umbrella group to all the camera clubs in Florida. And it's called the FCCC. So the FCCC is having a photography convention March 9th, 10th, and 11th here in Fort Myers, Florida. It's on the campus of FGCU, Florida Gulf Coast University. It's their spring break. So FCCC has taken over several of the buildings for a fabulous conference. The keynote speaker, there are two. Parrish Kohanam is a Canon Explorer of Light. He's amazing. He's a portrait fine art photographer, would you say?
Yeah.
Because he's not really a portrait photographer, but his fine art is so creative and so artistic. I mean, he sells his, I don't know, his work goes from $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 a piece.
It's amazing.
Very, very amazing guy. And then Maxis Gammas is a bird photographer. He's the other keynote speaker. And then there's a whole bunch of other speakers, including me, Peggy Farren. Joe's going to be running around like a crazy man trying to run the show.
And we'll be doing a live broadcast from there as well.
Oh, yes, we will be doing the Understand Photography show from there, but I can't remember who our live guest is, so I can't say that.
He's a
Vincent
photographer.
Versace. Thank you. I got Heather back there whispering.
Heather's doing a great job back there.
But then if you are in New England, I will be speaking July, I think it's 13, 14, and 15 at the New England Camera Club Conference, and that's in Amherst, Massachusetts, necccc.org, I think. New England Camera Club Conference. And I'm also speaking in Michigan at the end of July in Holland, Michigan, and I can't remember they're all too long. There's too many. Southwest Michigan photography, I don't know, but it'll be in the show notes because Heather types up amazing show notes. So thank you so much for watching the Understand Photography show. Thank you, Joe Fitzpatrick, for being a guest today. Next week on the Understand Photography show, my guest is going to be Isaac Hadid from Southern Photo Technical Service, and we're going to talk about focusing because getting sharp pictures is not always that easy. So we're going to talk about some of the technical reasons, some of the user errors, things like that. So that's next week on the Understand Photography show, which will be live on our Facebook page, facebook.com/understandphotography at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, or you can watch us on YouTube, or you can listen on iTunes. So thank you. Thank you for watching episode 76 of the Understand Photography show. I'm Peggy Farren. We'll see you next week. Thank you for watching the Understand Photography show. It would help us immensely if you would click like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.